Good morning. Good morning and welcome to episode 1 of Pursuit the Podcast. I'm always flowing with ideas, and today we're going to talk about how to use detachment to build your dream life. And I want you to walk away with questions you can ask yourself, a framework you can apply to know what to do on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, and a several year basis to give you purpose and as a byproduct bring you moments of happiness. Because really the most fulfilling thing in life is when we have a purpose and we're seeking that and we're working towards that. The goal of life is not to achieve happiness, because happiness is a fleeting event. Happiness, like sadness, comes and goes, and that's perfectly fine. That's perfectly fine. That's how it should be. What we really want is the pursuit of something. We want the pursuit of a purpose. And that's why this podcast is called Pursuit. Because there's an anecdote in my family of ever since I was 6 years old and my parents would drop me off at kindergarten, my dad would ask, "What's your goal?" And the programmed response to say was to go to college. Now I've grown up and I've realized there's so many more paths after high school than go to college. But this was the one that was instilled in me and what was the norm around me growing up. This pursuit of a goal, this going after something, I think that's what's led to so much genuine happiness in my life, because I've always been seeking and chasing this goal on a macro scale. Instead of waking up every day and just trying to get through the day, everything I do is in work of this greater goal. And I want to talk to you today how I used detachment to find what that pursuit was for me and how it served me and how it can serve you. And this idea has been floating and buzzing around my head so much, and I just had to come on and talk about it. And I want to start off with when you're 18 and you're choosing which major to pick to go to college. This is such a hard decision, and when you're graduating, everybody is asking you what you're going to study. And honestly, that's why I changed my question now to new high school grads. I ask them, do you know what you want to do, or do you know what you want to study? Because people straight up ask you, what are you going to do? And that can be a hard question to ask. But somehow I was able to come up with this way to figure out what I wanted to study. And there's a couple fundamental ideas in my life that have really served me that I don't know. Like nobody told me verbally, but they just came to me. The universe told me, and now I want to share something that the universe told me with you because it served me now. 7 years later, I'm 25, and I want you to know the same thing. Whether you are 18, whether you're 12, whether you're 36, whether you're 63, I want you to know this because I think you always have the opportunity to build a dream life, to find a new purpose, and our purpose will change. That's what we're going to walk away from this episode today from, and that's what I want you to know coming out of this. So, you ready to talk about it? Okay, let's go. So what I did to pick my major was ask myself a simple question. And that simple question is, what is the coolest thing I can picture somebody doing? That's the simple question I answered for myself. And that was to become an astronaut. And at first I didn't really tell anybody this. And honestly, it's one of my biggest pet peeves right now is when one of the first things that somebody tells someone about me is that I want to be an astronaut. But we can get into that later. Anyways, I had a base of choosing engineering going into college because that's what my dad did, and my dad loved his job, and all I knew that I wanted was a job that I loved. And I didn't know what I wanted to be, but I saw that he loved his job, and so I equated engineering with loving your job, so that's what I went into. And in the first year, you can choose specifically which type of engineering you want to study. There's aerospace, biomedical, chemical, industrial, systems, electrical, materials, so many different kinds. I asked myself, what do I think is the coolest thing that I can picture doing? And the answer came to be an astronaut. And then secondly, there was a lot of ego involved because in aerospace engineering, you had to take 2 math classes instead of 1 in your second year of college. And combined with those 2 things and wanting to prove to my parents that I don't even know what I was trying to prove, but it was a mix of ego and a mix of, I think that's the coolest thing. And so I chose that major, not because I was particularly passionate about space or airplanes, and I didn't grow up with that romantic, oh, I've wanted to be an astronaut ever since I was 4 years old, and I would look up at the stars, and no, I did not have that romantic beginning. And this childhood dream of wanting to be an astronaut. I just thought to myself, there's no way that I can pursue a major and a degree and a career that I don't think is the coolest thing in the world. I just thought I would get bored. I'm like, where's the motivation in that? Why would I study to do something that I don't even think is cool? And the key here is that I didn't have a particular aptitude for this engineering and math kind of stuff. I didn't have a particular intrinsic passion for it. I thought about it from a third-party perspective, looking at somebody else. What do I think is the coolest thing that somebody could do? Not as the coolest thing that I could do, but what could I look at somebody doing and think that's really cool? And so that's what I chose to do. One of the things that astronauts do is they learn how to fly in their training. So I was like, okay, I'll learn how to fly. In my sophomore year, I found a flight school, and I started doing ground school with them and started taking flying lessons. And along the way, I realized that honestly, that wasn't for me, and that is a whole topic that I have a lot to say, and we can definitely go into, and there's a lot of lessons learned from that. The point of this scope is to say that it guided me to do that. And that gave me experiences that are so unique. I mean, I learned how to fly a plane by myself. For anyone who's a pilot and is in this world, okay, it's very common, I know, because I was in that world, so it's not that crazy of a feat. But thinking about just like now, like so many years later, I'm like, Jesus, like I flew a plane by myself twice. It's a really cool thing to be able to look back in life and know that I've done. And it honestly feel very detached from that, because that feels like a different person who did that. But it was me, which is cool. And that also brings a sense of core confidence in yourself, of thinking like I learned how to do that. It makes you realize that you can do these wild things, and you can learn how to do these things. Yeah, I took the knowledge exam, and I had many flight hours accumulated. I think at least 80. A lot. And people typically do their first solos with less hours than that. It took me 3 tries to do my first solo, because the first time I was so nervous that so we do a practice run with the instructor, and then you go up by yourself. And on the practice run, I was literally in the passenger seat starting to tear up because I was so nervous, and I was thinking, okay, no, I can't do this in this state. Second time, we deferred it because of weather. And then the third time, I remember I woke up that day of my planned solo, and I had to have a podcast going in my ears from the moment I woke up to the moment I got to the airport, because I could not be left alone with my thoughts. But sure enough, I did it, and it was literally the best day of my life, and I celebrated afterwards. It was March 14th, 2021. I remember it because it was Pi 3.14. And so that was the first thing that I did just completely out of pursuit of this goal of wanting to be an astronaut. Now, we'll come back to this, and I was not passionate about. Now, this one has a caveat to it in that I didn't finish my pilot's license. The last thing that I have to do is do a cross-country solo. I could do solos around the airport. I felt comfortable enough that if something happened, I could land. But going out farther away from the airport made me nervous. And I realized to be a safe pilot, you have to be a passionate pilot who knows a lot about the machine and about flying. Honestly, I just did not have that passion to really study it to the way that I felt I needed to be a safe pilot. And so that's honestly like something that I still have in the back of my mind today. Like, I need to finish one day. And it does make me nervous, and like that's part of why I need to go back and do it and finish it. That's a whole story for another time. And I did learn a valuable lesson out of that, of as much as it's useful finding what you're passionate about, it's also useful finding what you're not passionate about. And but talking about our topic today, it's like I didn't wake up one day and just have this innate desire to fly a plane. I thought about it again from this detached perspective of what would an astronaut do? They would probably learn how to fly. So I learned how to fly. Then we move along, and the next major thing I did was learn how to scuba dive, because astronauts know how to scuba dive. So for some reason, they opened up a dive shop in Iowa where I used to live. And I was thinking, perfect. Astronauts, they learn how to scuba dive, so I'll learn how to scuba dive. And this was a much more fruitful and interesting endeavor for me. So I got basic scuba certified, and then I got advanced, and then I got nitrox certified. And this was because the astronauts dive in the NBL to do their training, which is the Neutral Buoyancy Lab. And it's part of NASA in Houston, where they have the U.S. segments of the International Space Station underwater in a pool, and the astronauts practice what they're going to do out on their spacewalks in the pool in the suit. That's why astronauts learn how to scuba dive. And there's a lot of parallels between going out on a spacewalk. So, like, astronauts know how to do this, so I need to learn how to scuba dive. I mean, if you start reading about people that want to become astronauts, this is the two basic things. I mean, fly and scuba dive. And then, at this point, I wasn't really advertising that I wanted to be an astronaut. I mean, some people here and there kind of knew, but I didn't, and to this day, I still don't really like, it's because, like, it's, people have kind of associated with me with it, I think, a little bit, and honestly, I don't like that. I like having it just be a personal, internal driver. I will say, having told people about it and having it be more on how served me in some ways, and I will get into that. Namely, what led to, I think, the next really cool experience in my life that brought me happiness as a result of Pursuit is I started working my full-time job in Houston, and I joined a company to work on their spacesuit contract. And at work, you know, if you kind of fly and you scuba dive, people kind of start to put two and two together that maybe you want to be an astronaut. So I remember this came up with a coworker, and this was a pretty chatty coworker. And I mean, honestly, if you live in Houston, like, every other person wants to be an astronaut. So I'm not saying that I'm unique or special or any way in that. It's there's a lot of people in that area want to do it, and a lot of people in that area are. But I think as much as I don't love the association, it did serve me, because when there was a potential opportunity to do future suit testing in the Neutral Buoyancy Lab, my name was in the mix, because people knew that I was an advanced scuba diver, that I had an interest in this, and so on and so forth. And if I hadn't talked about it, then, you know, people wouldn't really associate me with that. So I will say it did serve me in that way. And so when this opportunity came up to actually dive in the NBL, I mean, this was crazy. Like, that it was just so far-fetched. But when that little sliver of opportunity came up, you know, I had been preparing for this ever since a couple years ago when I got my very first scuba license. You know, it was for this, you know, even during the time when I couldn't really concretely imagine that I would have the opportunity to dive in there. I was preparing for it in the background, right? And so when this opportunity came up, I was like, yeah, of course, an astronaut would do anything to be able to dive in the pool for the first time, because if I can get certified now, then, you know, what can that set me up for in the future? So, and this is a whole, you know, journey that I could talk about again. It was honestly one of the best times in my life. But I was super aggressive at work to try to be a part of this opportunity. And I'll write it all out and I'll make it concise, and maybe I can tell this story, but it was something on the order of like 3 or 4 weeks I needed to pass this swim test. And I'm not a swimmer. I've never swam. I grew up playing tennis and those kind of things. I didn't know how to swim, and so, but I knew part of being an NBL diver was you needed to pass the swim test. And then you needed to get all these medical exams done. You needed a chest x-ray, you needed to test your hearing, blood tests, because you had to get checked out by the NBL doctor. And so I remember it was a couple of days at work. I literally left the office. I made a bunch of appointments around the city to try to get all my medical information in, because you had to get it in 2 weeks before your dive date. and everything was moving so fast, and I just had to act in that moment. And I shelled out so much money on all these appointments. There was no time to get it done through insurance. I needed to get the x-ray and everything. And oh my gosh, I will definitely tell that story, because shout out to Marjo and Tommy in Houston, because they literally helped make all those appointments happen in such a short amount of time. That was one part. And then the second part was the swim test. I practiced it for the first time and I didn't pass. And so I would go in before work, after work. I found pools. I swim up at my apartment pool, and I would send videos of me swimming to my tennis coach, who's also a triathlon coach, to correct my form and teach myself how to swim. And I would be watching YouTube videos of how to swim, and I learned, and I did it until I could swim fast enough to pass the test. And so to make a long story short, I was able to dive in the NBL and get some advice from a former astronaut who worked for our company, and he's great. I mean, so much valuable insight and advice, and just so inspirational in how fast he acted. And he had this, he truly made it happen. Truly, there's a lot of people that were integral to helping make that happen. And I'm so thankful for them. And he was my dive buddy, because you always go down with two people. And, I got certified to do that. And that was just incredible. And I'm so thankful for that. And again, it was because I just had this detached, third-party perspective of I want to be an astronaut, and this is what an astronaut would do. And then another thing is that astronauts need advanced degrees, and that's part of what fueled me going back to grad school, again, for aerospace engineering, specifically this time with the focus on bioastronautics, to keep learning about humans in spaceflight. And then, this was before I started grad school, but I had some free time when I was just living in Houston, and I had such an internal battle and an internal struggle with how to spend my time. I wasn't in school anymore, so I didn't have assignments. I was working for 8 hours a day, and then I just had so much time, and I was like, I don't know what to do. And so the driving question was, I just started thinking, what would an astronaut do? And then I would try to do that. And so an astronaut would try to lift, and they would run so that they would be physically fit. I started lifting and running, and I also started lifting for other reasons, which we can get into later, but that's part of it. And so even though I didn't start out with this being my passion, it's a really nice feeling to be able to feel like I have been finding my passion along the way. And my passion really is about the human body and understanding it. And so when I think about, a lot of times now, astronauts have PhDs. So when I start thinking about a PhD, I'm like, what would I want to study for that? And it's definitely something more tied to the medical side of aerospace. And so that's the direction that I steered my master's degree towards. And there's this course that they offer. Well, there's this course that I stumbled upon at Boulder, and it's called Medicine in Space and Service Environments. And I'm like, this is perfect. This is exactly what I want to do. And part of it is you take a little less than a week to go do a simulated Mars mission at the Mars Desert Research Station in Hanksville, Utah. And you have to apply to the class. And so I literally found the application something like a day or two before it closed, and you had to write an essay to say why you should go. And so I put everything to the side. I wrote that essay, and it was in person. And so I was doing my degree remotely at this time. And so I was like, if I get into this course, then I need to move to Colorado so that I can take this course in person. And so a lot of things had to line up secondarily to that to make that happen. But that was another thing that I'm like, what would an astronaut do? They need to do simulated missions. And so, to make a long story short, I applied to the class, got in, and moved to Colorado. That's such the unabridged version, or abridged, I don't know which one it is, but that's the short version. And so along the way of in this class of this medicine in space and surface environments, part of it is getting CPR certified and doing wilderness first aid. And I learned about emergency medicine, and I really liked this. I really found it interesting. Every lecture, I was so locked in. I loved learning about what hypothermia does to the body, the basics of strokes and heart attacks, and all these things about the human body. And I mean, in my free time, I love to do tests on my body and monitor it and do DEXA scans and things like that. And I'm like, this is what lights me up. This is what I like. I actually found what I like to do. Only in grad school. I mean, undergrad, I did not like those classes. Props to anybody who likes fluids and thermo and aerodynamics and structures and signals and all of that, but I don't find it interesting. Okay? Only in grad school that I find I really like this combination of medicine in space. And I would take classes like space life sciences and space habitat design, and I was like, okay, finally, I really actually like this. And so that course, and so I started thinking about, okay, what I'm gonna do for PhD. And then okay, definitely something medical. And I had so much experience on the engineering side, and I'm like, I need to beef up the medical side. And so that's why I started to do EMT training, and that's how I got exposed to it, because some of my classmates in that class were actually EMTs. And so as you can see, it all started with this fundamental question of what would an astronaut do? And then I just started doing little things that I thought that they would do. Even if I wasn't super interested in it, I would just do it. And eventually I started doing things that I actually want to do. So even though I didn't really want to fly because I had an intrinsic interest in it, I did it because I thought that that's a skill that I should learn to be on this path. And then now, I chose to pursue being an EMT because I actually like it. I actually want to do it. But I wouldn't have ever found that I want to do this if I didn't do that so many years ago and just put myself on the path. And so I think it's a way for us who just don't wake up, or from you're 6 years old, you just know what you want to be. How in the world do you know what you're supposed to be? And I firmly believe that we create ourselves, that we don't find ourselves, because all we are is a combination of what society teaches us is normal. And therefore you have the power to create yourself. And along the way, you steer it a little bit towards what you want to do. That's how detachment can help you build your dream life. I don't think you find it. I think you build it. So now, I mean, still to this day, when I don't know what to do, I think to myself, what would an astronaut do? And they would probably lift and study. The takeaway for anybody trying to choose what they want to study or choose what they want to do is just think about objectively what you think the coolest thing a person can do. Not the coolest thing that you think you're capable of doing, but just objectively, what do you think is cool? And then you just start trying to do it. And also want to add that this is not to say that you don't doubt yourself along the way. There's so many times I've doubted myself. Anyone close to me knows that I've called them and been I don't know if this is what I want to do. This is what I tell people I want to do, but I don't know if this is me. I don't feel like it's me. Yes, those thoughts, oh my gosh, they go through my head. I'm not saying that I'm set on this and then every single day I'm so sure about myself. No, it definitely comes in phases. But what I like about this is even when I have those daily, weekly blips in my what I think I want to do, because I just it's like setting a sail on the ship, in the sense of it gives you direction, it gives you a way to go, and to change the course of a ship that takes a long time, especially if you're a big ship. You don't just one day completely turn 90 degrees and go the other direction. That turn that you gets put in several days in advance. I'm no ship expert. This is the way I see it in my head. Because I've just put myself on that path. If I have daily deviations from that, even weekly deviations, even the last couple days and weeks, I was thinking, is this something I really want to do? And then I take a moment to look back and I'm like, okay, no, this is what I want to do. I take some time I pivot along the way. But because I have this overall sail set, I have, this degree I'm pursuing, and then I have my ideas for what I want to do next. I just have this global understanding of what I'm chasing, of what I'm pursuing. It helps a lot, because I think having a path, even if you're not sure that it's 100% the right path, is better than being on no path at all. And I'm definitely open to people disagreeing with that. This is just what's served me in my life. And I think if you don't know what that path is, I didn't know what I wanted that path to be when I was 18 choosing my major. Choose a path and start going down it. If you do have a passion, of course, pursue that. But for those of us that didn't wake up super early in life to what their passion was, this is a way that you can set your course on something and start working towards something. And I think you can find a lot of joy along the way, and a lot of happiness along the way, in pursuit of your goal. So I'd be more than happy to hear any oppositions to this, any other different experiences, and I'm totally open to hearing other perspectives. So thank you for listening, and I will see you on the next one.